Okay. Are we live? Please check. Are we live? Okay. Okay. Finally, we are back. Extremely sorry for the delay due to technical glitch. Okay. Is audio and video clear now? Okay. Any user, please specify whether audio and video is clear now. Am I audible? Voice echo. Okay, please check now. Is it fine now? Okay. Okay. So, in this particular lecture, we are going to cover the most important point of the budget, which was announced yesterday. So, we are going to cover the major portions only. You know? Okay. So, first thing first, the budget is presented as per the provisions of Article 112. The term budget is not mentioned into the constitution. Instead of that, annual financial statement is mentioned. That is AFS, annual financial statement, that is mentioned. Now understand, as per the recent budget, the receipt basically means the income of the government, receipt, that is income, and expenditure basically means expenses. So usually the budget is classified into these two categories. One is revenue budget and one is capital budget. Revenue budget basically means day-to-day income and expenditure of the government, and capital budget means the long-term income and expenditure of the government. So revenue budget can be further classified into revenue receipt. This is recurring income of the government, and revenue expenditure means recurring expenditure of the government. Now revenue receipt can be further classified into tax and non-tax. On the other hand, revenue expenditure basically means those expenditure which are done on regular basis, for example salary, pension, interest payment. So IPS, that is interest, pension and salary, these are basically referred as committed expenditure of the government. Committed expenditure basically means government is bound to spend this money. They cannot reduce this amount because interest is to be paid for the money which government has borrowed. Pension is to be paid to the people who has already provided service. Similarly, salary is to be paid to the people who has already done their service. Okay. So if we talk about the revenue receipt and capital receipt of the last year, so last year government generated revenue receipt of roughly 31 lakh crore and capital receipt of roughly 16 lakh crore, 16.9 to be specific. On the other hand, revenue expenditure of the government was roughly 37 lakh crore and capital expenditure was roughly 11 lakh crore. So let me simplify this for you. Revenue income and revenue expenditure. So revenue income is roughly 31 lakh crore. This entire amount is in lakh crore, so you need not to worry about that. This expenditure, revenue expenditure is roughly 37 lakh crore. This is about revenue budget. So basically it shows that in case of revenue budget we have deficit. Why deficit? Because our income is on 31 lakh crore and our expenditure is 37 lakh crore. So there is a deficit which is basically referred as a revenue deficit. Okay. Now coming to capital budget. So in capital budget, again our capital receipt, and that is CR, capital receipt is roughly 16.9 lakh crore and capital expenditure, CapEx, that is roughly 11 lakh crore. 11 lakh crore. Okay. Now understand two things. In exam they can ask you two basic type of questions regarding the trends in revenue and capital receipt and expenditure. So if we see the trends, so in case of revenue receipt, the trend is upward. Upward basically means since last 2-3 years the revenue receipt are increasing. This is the trend. But in case of capital receipt, the trend is downward. In case of capital receipt, the trend is downward. Similarly, in case of revenue expenditure, the trend is upward. It is straightforward upward. But in case of capital expenditure, the trend is zigzag. So four things are there. Total revenue receipt, they are increasing over a period of time. They are increasing in a straight manner in last 2-3 years. On the other hand, capital receipt, they are going downwards. One reason could be because government is focusing less on disinvestment, means less revenue is generated from disinvestment. Another part is related to borrowing. Okay. Now coming to revenue expenditure, so there is a upward trend in revenue expenditure. In case of capital expenditure, the trend is not so straight. That means there is a zigzag pattern. So you need to remember this pattern. In case of revenue receipt, the pattern is upwards. In case of capital receipt, the pattern is downwards. In case of revenue expenditure, the pattern is upwards. In case of capital expenditure, the pattern is zigzag. Okay, so far this is income and expenditure. Now the total expenditure that means revenue expenditure and capital expenditure. So capital expenditure is roughly 11 lakh crore, revenue expenditure is roughly 37 lakh crore. So total expenditure is going to be 48 lakh crore. You need not to mug up the exact number, just try to remember how much is income and how much is expenditure. The total receipt is roughly, total receipt from revenue account is roughly 31 lakh crore. Now net tax receipt, receipt basically means tax revenue is roughly 25 lakh crore. So out of this 31 lakh crore, roughly 25 lakh crore is through tax receipt. This can be further subclassified into direct tax and indirect tax, which we will cover. The fiscal deficit is 4.9% of GDP. Fiscal deficit refers to total borrowing of the government. Basically, it is the difference between the total expenditure of the government and total income of the government. Total expenditure and total income of the government, excluding borrowing. Now the target of the government is to bring the fiscal deficit down to 4.5% by next year. As of now it is 4.9. The objective is to reduce it to 4.5%. Second is inflation. Inflation is moving to the target of 4%. See, in 2016 MPC was set up. What was MPC? Monetary Policy Committee. And the objective of MPC was to maintain inflation in a range of 2% to 6%. That means minimum 2% and maximum 6%. Now as per the budget, this inflation target is now under control and inflation is moving towards 4%. Okay. Now second thing is that in this case the core inflation basically means the inflation which does not include volatile components. Now what are volatile components? Let me try to explain it. Volatile components. So in our country there are two volatile components, one is food and second is fuel. Food and fuel are volatile components in our country. Reason being, food is volatile. Volatile basically means the price fluctuates a lot. The reason is we do not have storage facility. So there is a lack of transportation and there is a lack of storage facility. The fuel is volatile again because the price is fluctuating. So fuel is volatile because we are import dependent. So it simply says that core inflation, that means inflation without food and fuel, is around 3.1%. So these are the important point from this first part, that our fiscal deficit FD is 4.9. Target is that we will reach to 4.5% by next year. Inflation that is also under control, and that is moving towards 4%, moving towards 4%. Why 4%? Because that is the target for MPC. What is MPC? Monetary Policy Committee. The target is to maintain inflation in 2% to 6%. Two important thing, this MPC is set up in 2016 as per the provisions of RBI Act of 1934, and specify in comment section it was set up on recommendation of which committee. So, MPC was set up on recommendation of which committee, specify that in the comment section. Okay. So, that is income and expenditure of the government. Now, let us try to understand what are the trends in overall tax revenue. Understand, this 25.83 lakh crore rupee has been generated through tax revenue. So, within tax that taxation can be further classified into direct tax and indirect tax. Yes, it was set up on recommendation of Urjit Patel committee. Okay. Now, if we consider the tax to GDP ratio, that means let us say if size of GDP is 100 rupees, then how much amount of money is collected as a tax. So, tax to GDP ratio in our country is 11.8%. Again, one important trend that in last couple of years, that means from 2022-23, it has not increased in a straight line. There was a downfall and then there is a upward trend. So, question can be asked that the tax to GDP ratio of India has increased in a steady manner. That means there has been a upward trend since this and this year. So, the trend is not upward. In between there was a trend in which the tax to GDP ratio has gone down. So, the gross tax receipt has gone down. As of now, it is 11.8%, out of which 6.8% is from direct tax and 5% is from indirect tax. Two important questions can be asked. A, what is the trend? So, is it increasing in a steady manner? No, it is not increasing. The trend is like this. That means there was a downfall at this point. Second trend, how much is it right now? So, it is 11.8%. Now, out of this 11.8%, how much is direct taxation? So, direct is 6.8 and indirect is 5%. That is another trend you need to keep in mind. Please do not try to mug up the numbers that how much amount has been collected, because usually it is not possible to remember that much data, but always try to remember one thing, that as of now the contribution of direct tax is higher than indirect tax. Okay, as of now we are not in a position to zoom it. So, I will try to explain it and then you will get a PDF of it. Okay. Okay. So, now coming to the income and expenditure of the government, that how government earn money and where that money is spent. So, first let us try to understand what is the source of money for the government. So, government generate 19% revenue from income tax, 5% revenue from union excise duty. Excise is basically imposed on manufacturing. Most of the excise duty is now covered under GST, but there are certain items which are outside GST and on them excise duty is imposed. So, please specify on petroleum who impose excise duty. Okay, GST revenue is roughly 18%. So, income tax revenue is higher than GST and corporate tax revenue is 17%. Now, one possible question that can be asked is that which is the highest contributor. So, let me write it down this way. First is IT, income tax, this is 19% contribution. Then we have GST, this is 18% contribution. Then we have corporate tax, this is 17%. So, a very factual question can be asked from this. Yes, it will be available in our Telegram channel, that means in the Telegram channel of institution. Ashish, as of now we will not be able to change background or we will not be able to zoom it, but yes, you will get PDF. Right now due to technical issues, of course, we will not be change it in the middle of the lecture. Yes, that is why I will try to speak it a little bit each and every detail so that at least you can understand. So, income tax is roughly 19% of the total revenue. That means if government is generating 100 rupee, 19 rupee are coming from income tax, 18 rupee are coming through GST, 17 rupee are coming through corporate tax. Apart from that, the biggest part is 27%, that is borrowing and other liabilities. Okay, 27% is the borrowing. 9% is non-tax receipt. Tax receipt and non-tax receipt we have already covered, that revenue receipt can be further classified into tax receipt and non-tax receipt. Now, tax receipt can be further classified into direct tax, for example, income tax, corporate tax. Indirect taxes can be, for example, GST, custom, excise. Okay. So, in case of non-tax, in case of non-tax, we have dividend. Dividend basically means income from the investment. For example, recently RBI paid the highest ever dividend. Now, that is important for your prelims. Specify in comment section how much amount RBI paid to the government as dividend this year. Okay. So, this is the income shows. Now, 2-3 questions can be asked from this particular slide. First question is, which is the leading contributor in the revenue of the government? So, A, borrowing. 27% of the income of the government is through borrowing. Remaining we have IT, that is on first position, then we have GST, then we have corporate tax, then we have excise, then we have custom. So, IT contribute roughly 19%, GST contribute roughly 18%, corporate tax contribute 17%, excise 5%, custom 4%. This is the major revenue shows. Okay. Now, coming to expenditure of the government, that how government spend the money. Now, understand one thing, if government has borrowed 27%, that means government need to pay interest also. So, interest payment are roughly 19% of our expenditure, that means roughly 1/5 of expenditure is on interest payment. Apart from that, 4% money is spent on pension. Finance commission and other transfer are 9%, defense expenditure is 8%, subsidies expenditure is 6%. Now, coming to schemes, so centrally sponsored scheme contribute or account for 8% of the expenditure. This is centrally sponsored, and central sector scheme account for 16%. In case of central sector, the central government is going to provide 100% funding, and in case of centrally sponsored scheme, the government is going to provide partial funding and remaining funding will be given by state government. Deepak, I won't be able to explain few terms in Hindi. For example, fiscal deficit को हिंदी में समझाना थोड़ा मुश्किल हो जाएगा. Yes, you people can play Hindi, English, politics, if you will be able to score more. Okay. So, centrally sponsored scheme 8% and central sector scheme 16%, interest payment 19%. State share of taxes and duty 21%. So, 2-3 questions can be asked. Again, let me simplify this entire thing. Revenue side, biggest contributor is borrowing, that is 27% through borrowing. Then we have IT, GST, then we have corporate tax, then we have excise, and then we have custom. So, these are the revenue sources: 19%, 18%, 17%, 5%, 4%. This is the major income source of the government. Coming to expenditure, so interest 19%, subsidy 6%, defense 8%, okay, pension 4%, and Centrally sponsored scheme, sponsored basically means central will provide certain funding and state will provide certain funding, that is 8%, central sector scheme 16%. 16%. Okay. This is the income and expenditure of the government. Now, if we classify this expenditure in terms of various initiative, that highest amount has been allocated for defense sector, roughly 4.5 lakh crore, then for rural development sector, that is 2.65 lakh crore, then agriculture 1.51, home affairs 1.50, education 1.25, and IT and telecom 1.16. Rather than remembering the exact number, just try to understand the pattern is like this way: defense, then rural development, then agriculture, then home affairs. Okay, for MG Narega, the government has allocated roughly 86,000 crore rupee. For research and development project, government has allocated 1200 crore rupee. So again, the trend is upward in both cases. For nuclear projects, the government has allocated roughly 2228 crore, and for pharma sector, pharma industry, the government has allocated roughly 2143 crore. In these four initiatives, the expenditure or the allocation has increased. Okay. Now, coming to certain changes. First and foremost, there are certain changes in custom duty. Custom is imposed on the import of items. Understand one thing, it is not humanly possible for you to remember each and every change in the custom duty, but there are certain important changes which are specified in the budget itself. So, just have a look at those changes. Okay. So, first change is that custom duty is imposed on imports, right. So, on certain items custom duty has been reduced. For example, custom duty has been reduced on 3 cancer medicine. Now, it is important for you to go through the name of these cancer medicine, so that you can understand that why government has reduced this custom duty. Because of reduction of custom duty, now these medicine will be available at a affordable price. Okay. So, because of that, the medicine will be available at affordable price. Apart from that, on mobile phone and mobile charger, the custom duty, basic custom duty has been reduced. Instead of remembering the exact amount, just understand the trend. So, in case of mobile industry, now the basic custom duty has been reduced, so it is easier to import those items. Yes, this one is important, you need to remember the percentage as well. For example, in case of gold and silver, the custom duty has been reduced. Previously, I think it was 15%, please cross check that. Now, it has been reduced to 6%, and on platinum, it is roughly 6.4%. So, this is something which you need to remember in exact amount. Yes. Apart from that, on shrimp and fish feed, that means the food of shrimp and fish, on that the government has reduced the basic custom duty to 5%. Apart from that, if there are capital goods which are imported for the solar cells and panels, that means for manufacturing of solar cell and panels, if there is a import of capital goods, government has reduced or exempted the custom duty on those capital goods. Okay, and last is fully exempted custom duty on 25 critical minerals. Again, please do not try to mug up the name of each and every mineral. It's not humanly possible, but just understand that government has reduced or exempted the custom duty on these 25 minerals. Okay, so these are certain changes in the custom duty. Now, apart from these 3 cancer medicines, government has also reduced the custom duty on X-ray tubes and X-ray machines. Government has also reduced the custom duty on gold, silver and platinum. So, the objective is that our domestic industry, which is related to gold and silver, that will be given a boost. Okay. Next change is related to certain, in case of certain items, the custom duty has been increased. Now, these are important. So, you just need to understand that in which cases it has been increased. Okay. So, the basic custom duty on ammonium nitrate has increased to increased from 7.5% to 10%. So, on ammonium nitrate, on ammonium nitrate, it has been increased from 7.5% to 10%. On plastic, for example, PVC flex banners, it has been increased to from 10% to 25%. That means government want to discourage the import of these items. On critical minerals, we have just seen that it is fully exempted from the custom duty. Similarly, in case of capital goods basically means heavy machinery for solar panels. In case of those items, they are exempted from the custom duty. That was the part related to custom duty. Please understand, custom duty is indirect taxation which is imposed on imports. Apart from custom duty, is IGST also applicable in case of imports? Please specify in the comment section whether IGST is applicable on the imports or not. Okay. Yes, we will discuss about Bihar package also, we will discuss about that, but in the end we will discuss about the specific initiative taken for the Bihar government. Okay. Now coming to the direct taxes. So, in case of direct taxes, there are two major changes. First is in case of CGT, that is capital gain tax. So, capital gain tax basically means you had an asset, you sold that asset, and because of that you had a gain. On this gain you have to pay CGT. So, previously there were two classification, long term capital gain tax and short term capital gain tax. Short term capital gain tax was 15%, now it has been increased to 20%. Long term capital gain tax was 12.5%, or it was 10% actually, and it has been increased to 12.5%. That is the major change in the CGT. Okay, yes, it is the major change in CGT. One more thing, if the income through this capital gain is less than 1.25 lakh, that means less than 1,25,000, then you need not to pay CGT. But if it is beyond 1.25 lakh, then you need to pay CGT. Previously this limit was 1 lakh. Now again understand, you are not preparing for any kind of taxation exam, so it is not humanly possible for you to remember each and every minute detail. Just try to understand. In case of CGT, there are two type of CGT, long term and short term. On long term, previously it was 10%, now it has been increased to 12.5%. On short term, it is 15%, it was 15%, now it has been increased to 20%. Okay, that is on CGT. Now understand, the government has abolished angel tax. Angel tax is, let me explain, angel tax. For example, you started a startup company. Okay, let me explain a very in a very simple way, that you started a startup company, and the job of that startup company is to handle the spammers on YouTube channels. That is the job of that startup company. Now of course everyone will like your idea, and therefore let us say there is ABC who decided to fund your startup company. So that will be, this ABC will be angel investor, and the funding given by ABC was subject to taxation, and that taxation was known as angel tax. For example, Mr. Ratan Tata liked your idea, decided to fund your company, and that funding was subject to this angel taxation. Now government has abolished this, so therefore it will help startup companies to secure funding in a much better way. They do not have to pay angel taxation on this funding. That was the objective of angel tax, which has been now abolished. So one simple question can be asked, that abolishment of angel tax will help which of the following? So it will help the startup companies to receive funding. Yes, it has been abolished. Okay. Now coming to second thing, the corporate tax rate. So on foreign companies, the corporate tax rate was 40%, 40. Let me write it this way, corporate tax. So this was 40% earlier, now it has been reduced to 35%. This is something which can be asked directly, because it is quite significant development. So corporate tax has been abolished significantly, that means 5% has been reduced. Okay. Now 2-3 things. So far we have covered that in direct taxation, government has changed taxation in corporate. Government has changed custom duty for certain items. For example, for minerals, critical minerals, government has totally exempted them from custom duty. Apart from that, capital goods for solar panels, they are also exempted from custom duty. Okay. Angel tax is also abolished. Now coming to next one, equalization levy. Now if you remember, in classes we have discussed that there are two things, corporate tax or MAT, that is minimum alternative tax. This is to be paid by those companies which are registered in India. Registered in India. Those companies which are not registered but generate revenue from India, they were subject to equalization levy. Equalization levy. Initially it was imposed on Google, and that is why it was also known as Google tax. Now understand, now there is a provision of GMT, that is global minimum tax. So the major countries of the world have agreed to impose at least 15% of global minimum tax, and that is why Government of India is planning to discontinue this equalization levy. Planning to discontinue the equalization levy, and therefore Government of India has put this proposal that we are going to withdraw this 2% levy. I think it will be effective from August 2024 itself. Okay, that is major change. Now coming to the most important part, income tax. So in income tax there are two important changes. A, slabs has been changed slightly. Usually they won't ask technical question, but for the sake of understanding you should have a fair idea. So previously there were slabs, for example 0 to 3 lakh, 0%. Let me write it down. So this was the scenario of pre-budget. Pre-budget, there was 0 to 3, 0%, 3 to 6, 5%, 6 to 9, 10%, 9 to 12, 15%, 12 to 15, 20%, and 15 plus was subject to 30%. This was the situation before budget. Now what has changed is that first slab is same as it is, 0 to 3, 0%, 3 to 7. In that one it was 3 to 6. So there is upgradation of slab from 3 lakh to 7 lakh, and it is going to be 5%. Third slab is going to be 7 to 10 lakh, that is going to be 10%. Then 10 to 12, there is another slab, 10 to 12, this is going to be 15%. Then from 12 to 15 lakh, there is another slab. Now it is similar to this one only, 20%. And then from 15 plus there is 30%. So if we have to understand the change, so majorly the change is from this slab to this slab. It started from 3 to 6. Now instead of 3 to 6 we will have a tax slab of 3 to 7, and then 7 to 10. Again this slab is of 2 lakhs only, and then this is regular slab, this is regular. Instead of 7 in the old taxation structure it used to be 6 lakh. Okay, so these are the major changes. Okay, now understand one more thing. Previously the deduction of 50,000, certain times a comment section show that why internet should not be so free, because there is an opportunity cost associated with everything. So why internet should not be free? Because if it is grossly misused, then there is no point in making it affordable. So things should not be totally free, otherwise people do not value that. Okay, so previously the deduction was of 50,000 and now it is of 75,000. So two possible questions can be asked from this entire part. A, the changes in the slab, so how many slabs are there? So these are the slabs, new slabs. Second is, previously there used to be a deduction of 50,000, now there is a deduction of 75,000. So 25,000 extra deduction is allowed, standard deduction. Standard deduction basically means this is kind of exemption given to the salaried people. Okay, now coming to the budget. So in budget there are 4 major focus. Actually in the interim budget also the government has specified that we are going to focus on 4 major parts of our economy. One is Annadata. Annadata basically means farmer. So we are going to focus on farmer. We are going to focus on Garib, that is poor. We are going to focus on women, that is female, Mahila, and yuva, that is youth. So, the four focus or four major caste as per the budget are farmer, poor, women and youth. Keeping this theme of interim budget into mind, government has continued on that platform itself, and government has provided that for budget these are going to be four themes. These four themes are, easy way to remember is MSME. MSME. M stands for again MSME, that is micro, small, medium enterprises. This M stands for middle class. This S stands for skill, and this E stands for employment. So, very basic question can be asked, what are the major themes of the budget? So, these are four themes: A, MSME, middle class, skill and employment. Okay. These are four major themes. Now, understand, for employment, for skill, government has announced various schemes. First and foremost, let us try to understand what are the major priorities of the budget. So, again a very simple question can be asked, what are the major priorities of the budget? So, government has specified 9 priorities of the budget in the pursuit of Viksit Bharat, that means 9 priorities for the developed India. So, two questions can be asked, how many priorities are there, that is 9 priorities. Second question can be which are those 9 priorities, that means which of them is a priority or not a priority. These kind of basic question can be asked. So, let us start with the first one. First one is related to agriculture, that is productivity and resilience in agriculture. Second priority is related to skill and employment. Third priority is related to inclusive human resource development and social justice. In fact, the special package to Bihar and Andhra Pradesh has been given as a part of this one only. Then manufacturing and services. So, this is primary sector, this is secondary and tertiary sector. Then urban development, energy security, infrastructure, innovation, research and development, and next generation reforms. Okay. So, these are the major 9 priorities. London का spelling गलत है. These are major 9 priorities of the government for the developed India. So, two questions can be asked, A, which of the following is a priority, second is how many priorities are there. So, you need to remember that. Okay. Now, let's try to cover each of these priorities. Again, it is not humanly possible to cover each and every factual information. So, just try to cover the important part. First is related to agriculture. So, in agriculture, the government has allocated 1.52 lakh crore for agriculture and associated sector. How government is planning to develop this sector? So, government is planning to announce 109 high yield varieties and climate resilient varieties. Climate resilient variety basically means these varieties will not have that much adverse impact of the climate change. So, 109 high yield and climate resilient varieties of 32 crops will be released. This number is important, a direct factual question can be asked from this one. Okay. Now, apart from that, government is planning to make sure that 1 crore farmers across the country, 1 crore farmers shift towards natural farming. Again, number is important, 1 crore farmer shift towards natural farming. In addition to that, there will be 10,000 need based bio input resource center will be set up. So, if we summarize this entire thing, so first and foremost, for first priority, that is for agriculture, A, the allocation is 1.52 lakh crore, B, there will be 109 varieties of how many crops? 32 crops. Third thing is that 1 crore farmers will be switched to natural farming. Now, if you remember in class we have discussed zero budget natural farming. Specify in the comment section that who provided or who gave the concept of zero budget natural farming. Okay. Now, apart from that, the government is going to set up, or government is going to promote 10,000 bio input resource center. Basically these are resource center for agriculture, resource center. And last is DPI for agriculture to be implemented for coverage of farmer and their land in 3 years. Now understand this concept of DPI is very important. Let me explain it in a very simple way. DPI, digital public infrastructure. Now understand, in usual sense, for example, we when we discuss about road, rail, bridge, school, hospitals, public hospital, public schools, so usually we call it as infrastructure for public, that is public infrastructure. But in a similar fashion there are digital infrastructure. For example, UPI. UPI is a government infrastructure for public, that is digital public infrastructure. For example, JAM Trinity. What is JAM? Jan Dhan Aadhaar Mobile. Jan Dhan Aadhaar Mobile. That is another example of digital public infrastructure. Apart from that, for example, there is a DG Locker. DG Locker. DG Locker. DG Locker is nothing but a storage facility where people can store their documents. Okay, that is DG Locker. So these are certain example of digital public infrastructure. Similarly, for agriculture sector, government is developing a public infrastructure where the farmer related information will be stored. So that is the objective of first priority, that is agriculture. Second priority is employment and skilling. So let us try to see what are the provisions in employment and skilling. So there are 3 schemes in this part. First scheme is for first timers, that means those who became employee for the first time. So government will provide 1 month wage, or let me write it down, first timers. They will get 1 month wage. Wage basically means salary. If they are enrolled or if they are engaged in formal sector, and it will be given in 3 installments, and the amount is 15,000. So that is a first part, or first timers. This is the employment scheme, or the government package, employment linked incentive package for new employment. Employment linked incentive basically means government will provide incentive if there is new employment generation. Okay. Now second part is related to job creation. That means if there is new employment, job creation in manufacturing. Job creation in manufacturing. So as per this provision, if there is contribution by employee and employer into EPFO. Now what is EPFO? That is Employee Provident Fund Organization. So in EPFO there is a contribution by employee and there is a contribution by employer. So this second scheme, that is job creation in manufacturing, this will provide incentive to both employee and employer for EPFO contribution in the first 4 years. That means government will provide certain incentive to the contribution of employee and the contribution of employer into this EPFO for 4 years. That is the second part of the scheme. Third scheme is related to employers, that means the job creators or employment opportunity creators. Monthly wage installment, see basically it simply means total 15,000 rupee will be given, up to 15,000 maximum amount will be given, and it will be given in 3 installment if there is first person, that means if someone has entered into the job market for the first time, that means if it is someone who is totally new person. Okay. Now coming to third part, so government will reimburse basically means government will give it back the contribution of employers up to 3,000 rupee per month for 2 years for all new hires. Let's say there is a company ABC that has hired new people, and because it has hired new people, it will have to contribute to EPFO. Let's say it is contributing 4,000. So, government is saying we will return back 3,000 up to 3,000 rupee for the next 2 years. That is the provision of third scheme. So, these are 3 schemes related to employment generation. First is for first timers, second for job creation in manufacturing, and third is for employers. Now, for skill development, the government has announced a specific financial package. Okay, the government has announced a centrally sponsored scheme. Centrally sponsored scheme, let me write it down. For skill, government has announced centrally sponsored scheme, under which we are going to provide skill to 20 lakh people over 5 years. This is important, again number is important. So, we are going to provide skill to the 20 lakh people over a period of 5 years. Apart from that, model skill loan will be given, model skill loan, and this loan up to 7.5 lakh can be given. Apart from that, for higher education, government is going to provide loan up to 10 lakh rupee, up to 10 lakh rupee. Government will provide the loan, education loan, if someone is not receiving benefit from any other scheme. So, 3 important part. A, government has announced a centrally sponsored scheme for skill development. Under that, we are going to provide skill to 20 lakh people, and we are going to train these people in the next 5 years. Then there will be model skill loan scheme, under which loan up to 7.5 lakh will be given. Then there is a provision for the educational loan or financial assistance up to 10 lakh rupee. Okay. Next pillar, and the most important pillar, because this pillar will have specific detail for Bihar, which we will discuss in last part as well. So, inclusive human development, human resource development and social justice. As a part of this, government has announced Purvodaya scheme, Purvodaya, that means Puro Uday. So, rise of eastern side of India. So, as a part of this, there is a industrial node at Gaya, which will be developed along Amritsar Kolkata industrial corridor. Apart from that, there will be power project including new 2400 megawatt power project at Pirpanti, which is in Bhagalpur, and it will be taken up at a cost of 21400. As of now, you need not to mug up. Bihar specific will be discussed separately. Apart from that, Andhra Pradesh Reorganization Act, specifically Andhra Pradesh has been given the financial package of 1500 for the development of Amravati, that is the capital. Apart from that, there will be 2 industrial nodes. One is Kopurthi, which is along Visakhapatnam Chennai industrial corridor, Visakhapatnam Chennai industrial corridor, and second is Orvakal, which is along Hyderabad Bengaluru industrial corridor. The government has also announced the allocation of more than 3 lakh crore for specific schemes related to women and girls. How much amount was allocated for agriculture? Roughly 1.52 lakh crore. Then for tribal community, government has announced Pradhan Mantri Janjatiya Unnat Gram Abhiyan. As a part of this scheme, 63,000 villages will be covered, and that will benefit 5 crore tribal people. Apart from that, government is going to focus on northeastern region and 100 branches of IPPB. What is IPPB? India Post Payment Bank. So, 100 branches of IPPB has been set up, will be set up in the northeast region. Next priority, or the fourth priority, is manufacturing and services. So, for manufacturing, government has announced a specific credit guarantee scheme for MSME sector. Apart from that, the government has also announced Mudra loans. So, there were 3 categories under Mudra loans: Shishu, Kishore and Tarun. So, previously the loan up to 10 lakh were allowed under Tarun category, up to 50,000, then from 50,000 to 5 lakh, sorry, and then from 5 lakh to 10 lakh. Now, government has increased it to 20 lakh, provided that someone who has borrowed money earlier has repaid it on time. That is for MSME Mudra loans. And additionally, to promote export hub will be set up. Again, it is very generic thing. Export hub will be set up to promote export from MSME. Then there will be critical mineral mission. Critical mineral mission basically means the government will focus on the production of critical mineral, the government will focus on the acquisition of critical minerals from outside India if we do not have those minerals in our country. So, the critical mineral mission will focus on production, recycling and overseas acquisition of these minerals. Next pillar is urban development. In urban development, government is encouraging states to reduce the stamp duty on the properties which are purchased in the name of women, so that the property ownership is more and more transferred in the name of women. So, for that government is encouraging states to reduce their stamp duty. Apart from that, government is focusing on transit oriented development. Transit basically means transport. Transport oriented development is focused, and the focus will be on 14 large cities which have the population of more than 30 lakh. Government is also focusing on urban housing, and the focus is on the housing need of 1 crore urban population. For urban housing we have Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. Then government is also focusing on street market. Street market basically means on weekend there is a market, or which are basically referred as weekly hart. So, government is focusing on the development of 100 weekly hart. That means weekly on the streets there will be a market which is to be promoted. Stamp duty, whenever someone purchases property, so there is a stamp duty which is imposed by the state government. Now, central government is saying that we should reduce that duty specifically if the property is transferred in the name of female or women. Okay. Next pillar is energy security. So, government is focusing on energy security. For that purpose, a few important things are done. A, small and modular nuclear reactors will be developed. See, understand, nuclear reactor basically means we are trying to generate nuclear energy. Problem is we have big nuclear reactors. Now, government is saying we should focus on smaller reactors so that we can establish them without much this paperwork, and we can establish them without much capital investment. That is why government is focusing on a partnership with private sector for research and development of Bharat small modular reactor and newer technology for nuclear energy to set up small reactors. Yes, Gati Shakti is in transport sector. Okay. Next, apart from that, government is also focusing on the energy transition pathway. Let me simplify this entire thing. What is this energy transition? See, now everyone is saying coal is bad. Okay. Now, what will happen if we discontinue coal? Apart from energy thing, apart from energy dependency, coal sector also provide employment to a large section of population. What will happen to that population? Similarly, for railway, the major revenue come from coal sector. If we talk about the freight revenue for railways, majorly it is coming from the transportation of coal. So, what will happen to that revenue? So, that is why whenever we are saying or whenever we are focusing on energy transition, we also need to focus on employment, we also need to focus on the revenue, then only it will make sense. Okay. So, that thing is government is planning that we will focus on energy transition. Merely just because developed countries are saying that coal is bad, we cannot discontinue coal. What will happen to employment? What will happen to our energy security? So, we are going to do it, but in a phased manner. Okay. Apart from this, the government is also focusing on pumped storage policy. Pumped storage policy basically means, let us say there is a hydroelectric power generation. So, in one side we are going to store water so that we can use that water whenever there is a requirement of electricity generation. That pillar was energy security, and next pillar is infrastructure. So, in infrastructure, government is going to focus on capital expenditure, that is capex, and it is 3.4% of GDP. Now, just try to remember what was the pattern in capital expenditure. Is it increasing in a steady manner? Is it increasing in a steady manner, or is there any zigzag pattern? Specify in the comment section what is the pattern in capital expenditure of the government and what is the pattern in revenue expenditure of the government. Okay. Apart from that, government is focusing on infrastructure investment by state government. So, there is a provision of 1.5 lakh crore for long term interest free loan to the states for infrastructure development. Government of India is giving interest free loan to the states for infrastructure development. Okay. Then there is a Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana, under which all weather road will be provided to 25,000 rural habitants. Now there is important provision, and that is related to irrigation and flood mitigation. So the financial amount of 11,500 rupee will be given to projects such as Kosi Mechi intra-state link and other schemes in Bihar. So Bihar part we will discuss separately, but this is something which has been given to Bihar as a package for flood mitigation. Apart from that, government will provide financial assistance to Assam, Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand and Sikkim for flood, landslide and other projects. 4 states are there. One is Bihar, Himachal. Apart from Bihar, these are the states: Himachal, Assam, Uttarakhand and Sikkim. So these states will receive financial allocation as a part of irrigation and flood mitigation. For Bihar, it is Kosi Mechi river interlinkage project. Okay, for tourism sector, specifically in Bihar and Odisha, government has given specific emphasis. For example, the development of Vishnupad temple corridor and Mahabodhi temple corridor. So Vishnupad temple corridor and Mahabodhi temple corridor. Okay, then the government will focus on the development of Rajgir and Nalanda. So these are the places which were in news because of the development related to tourism sector. Okay. Now coming to Odisha, so government is also focusing on the beaches of Odisha and to protect wildlife of Odisha. Specific initiative will be taken. That is part of this 7th priority. Next priority, 8th priority is innovation, research and development. So as a part of next priority, government is going to focus on Anusandhan, that is basically research, National Research Fund. So as a part of this fund, there will be financing pool of 1 lakh crore for promoting research and innovation at large scale. For space sector, government has specified a venture capital fund of 1000 crore that will be set up so that we can give a boost to space economy and we can increase it by 5 times in the next 10 years. That was 8th pillar. 9th pillar is related to next generation reform. So new reforms. First part of the reform is related to rural land. So as a part of first reform, yes, there are 12 industrial corridors. Again, it is not humanly possible to specify or to cover each and every point of budget. Just try to focus on the most important ones. Okay, rural land related actions. So there will be Bhu Aadhaar for all lands. Bhu Aadhaar basically means we all have Aadhaar card ID, which is unique identity for us. Similarly, for land also we are going to issue Bhu Aadhaar, and there will be digitization of the maps. Similarly, in urban land there will be digitization. For labor, we have tried to integrate e-Shram portal. E-Shram portal is for providing certain benefits to the labor. Then there is NPS Vatsalya. Now this is important. NPS is basically new pension scheme. So NPS, previously it was for adults. Now it is for kids also. That means you can plan pension for your kids. Right now you can continue to contribute. This contribution can be by parents or by guardian, and once the kids will be adult, then this will be converted into a full-fledged pension scheme, and the pension will be given after the retirement age. Okay, so this is something which is new and it is for minor. Now coming to the financial package for Bihar and Andhra Pradesh. So first thing first, these financial packages are given as a part of Purvodaya scheme. What is Purvodaya? Purv plus Uday, that means revival of East or Eastern states. So as a part of Purvodaya, following states are covered. A, these states can be asked directly that which states are covered. So Bihar, Jharkhand, West Bengal, Odisha and Andhra Pradesh. Second thing, Andhra Pradesh got the financial package of 15,000 crore for the development of capital Amravati. Bihar has received the financial package for various projects. For example, for road connectivity projects, Bihar received 26,000 crore rupees, and as a part of that, following projects will be developed. First is Patna Pune Expressway, Buxar Bhagalpur Expressway, Bodh Gaya, Rajgir, Vaishali and Darbhanga Expressway, and then there will be 2-lane bridge over river Ganga at Buxar. All these names are important for upcoming BPSC because a direct factual question can be asked. Apart from that, there is one industrial corridor node in Gaya, which we have already covered. So, specify in comment section it will be part of which industrial corridor. This industrial node at Gaya, it will be part of which industrial corridor. Let us see how much information you are able to recall. Okay. Apart from that, there will be a 2400 megawatt power plant, and this will be at Peerpanthi of Bhagalpur. This will be set up with a cost of 21,400. So, this is 26,000 for road, 21.4 thousand for power plant. This power plant will be set up at Peerpanthi and it is in Bhagalpur. Okay. Apart from that, Bihar will also receive financial assistance for flood mitigation, which we have covered in the previous slide as well. So, financial assistance will be given and it is of 11,500 crore rupee for projects like Kosi Mechi interlink project. Okay. And central government will also support the development project, for example, Vishnupad temple corridor, which we covered in the previous slide, Mahabodhi temple corridor, as well as Nalanda and Rajgir. So, these are the important financial allocation for Bihar. For Andhra Pradesh, we have discussed that Andhra Pradesh will receive 15,000 as a financial allocation for development of Amravati. So, these were the most important pointers in the budget. Yes, it will be part of Amritsar Kolkata industrial corridor. Okay. So, that was all for this budget. Now, again you will be given a summary, but try to remember the most important points and try to solve questions related to budget. Otherwise, related to allocation and factual information, as I said earlier, you can remember, in fact, we can provide you the original document if it is humanly possible for you. Then yes, Mohit, you can remember entire budget also. In fact, you are advised to remember entire budget. You seems to be a bright student. Please remember entire budget and please remember entire survey also. Okay, that was all for this budget. Thank you. Keep revising and just try to remember the most important facts if you can. That's all for the day. Thank you.